Depend on it. When the Prime Minister thought, who should I buy them from? He looked around the world and he said, I know.
And they haven't talked with the Conservatives at all on this aspect. They roll it out on their own. Planning and being a team coach means you talk to your players. That means you hear from each and every one of them, and you take parts of what they say to help improve what you're doing. And you don't just run out there helter-skelter without coming up with some official plan and procedures. It's not A, Z, B, D. It's A, B, C, D, so on.
Questions and comments? Une très brève question, l'honorable député de Mégantic-Lérable.
Very brief question. The honourable member for Mégantic-Lérable. So if I understand properly, we've been hearing the Liberals use the term Team Canada for quite some time when it comes to COVID and the US. But really, that's just words because they're not behaving like Team Canada. Is that correct?
Victoria Moose Mountain, very short answer, very brief answer.
That certainly is correct. As someone who's been involved with coaching hockey for all my life, I mean, the one thing you did learn is when you talk about teamwork, you talk about working with the team. But that's somebody who actually is working with the team. And this government has not spent a single amount of effort to actually work with the team. It's purely being a coach who doesn't talk to his...
Resuming debate, the honourable...
The country that's holding our people hostage. You can imagine the PRC Politburo filled with bureaucrats rolling around on the ground in gut-splitting laughter at this Prime Minister's naivete.
For Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan.
It's a pleasure for me to be able to speak on Bill C-14 and indeed to pick up on many of the themes that were discussed by my colleague from Souris Moose Mountain, although I don't know nearly as much about sports as he does, so I probably won't be as well versed on those issues, but certainly I share with him a concern about the impact on our energy sector. What we see right now as the government talks about their various proposals around government spending is really a government that says, well, we're not going to support the existence of your job. In fact, we're going to put in place policies that will likely kill your job, but don't worry, we're going to have some money there for you afterwards. And what I hear back from Canadians over and over again is that, first of all, that they're interested in working. Their desire is to be able to get back into employment, to be able to have the joy and satisfaction and pride that comes from earning your own income. But secondly, they understand that the government's approach over the long term just isn't realistic. You cannot have fewer jobs and more government subsidy and expect that that is sort of an economic plan, that's going to give us the capacity to provide support to people in the long run. Now, we're debating Bill C-14, which lays out aspects of the government's fiscal agenda. And in fact, part of this bill is to correct errors in previous bills. There have been other bills that the government has put forward and pushed hard to have rushed through quickly and then have had significant technical or otherwise flaws with the bills that have had big negative impact on individuals as well as on businesses. So we are carefully reviewing, understanding this legislation to make sure that we don't create more errors even in the process of the government correcting the errors that they've made in the past. Now, Conservatives are supportive of providing essential support to people in the midst of obviously very challenging circumstances. But our major concern as we look at the government's fiscal plan for the present and for the future is that they don't have a plan for jobs and growth, for getting Canadians back to work. Discussion of providing various kinds of benefits without thinking about jobs and growth. But they miss the reality that if we don't have a plan for jobs and growth then we're going to just simply, inevitably, we're going to run out of the fiscal capacity to provide Canadians with the support that they need. We have to be growing the economy and creating wealth before we're in a position to redistribute it.
Madam Speaker, simple question. When he wasted 100 days in the PRC, what the hell was he thinking?
Anyone? I mean, it's just $250 million. I mean, what's that between friends, right? Anyone? Any data? No?
Thank you, Ms. Rampel-Garner.
Thank you, Chair.
And that is where I want to really focus my arguments today. This is the frame through which I see sort of questions of fiscal policy, that the cost of government programs depends on two things. It depends, number one, on how much those programs allocate to individuals who need them. And secondly, how many people need them. If you have very generous unemployment benefits, but you have a very small percentage of the population unemployed, then that's going to cost you less than if you have a larger percentage of the population unemployed in the midst of lower benefits. So it's not just a function of the size of benefits you're providing, it's a function of the level of need for those benefits as well as the size of those benefits. Logically then, if we notice the enormous levels of government spending, the runaway deficits we see right now, and we say we need to reduce government spending at some point, then there are two ways of doing that. One might be to reduce the amount of money allocated to individuals or as part of individual benefit programs. But another might be to strategically think about how we can reduce the need for those government benefits. If we can find ways of increasing the employment rate, then there will be less need for unemployment benefits, and it will cost the government less, even if they are providing sufficient benefits to help people in those situations. Similarly, you might say this with respect to criminal justice. If we can reduce the crime rate, then we're going to be needing to spend less money on responding to crime. So if we look at the causes of those needs for government response, and we can find ways of addressing that underlying need, then it costs government less, and then we have more fiscal capacity to provide resources to people in that situation of significant need. And of course, I think we would all generally agree that reducing people's need for or reliance on government services is a much better route to go than simply reducing the availability of those services without taking into consideration how we can address the issue of people's real or perceived need for them. But this underlines the point then that we shouldn't be measuring the success or effectiveness or commitment of government in terms of spending alone. You might have a government that is spending a lot of money providing benefits to people, but doing so in a way that is poorly targeted and doing so in a way that actually doesn't address underlying root causes of that need, and therefore is not there for those who are in a position of needing that support. You could imagine, on the other hand, a situation where a government has very generous, very targeted benefits in situations where people have need, and at the same time is addressing root causes such that there is less need for government services. And that government would, in the latter case, actually be spending less money. They would be spending less money by having more targeted benefits and by thinking about need for government services, not just about the magnitude of those services that are in place. So as we think about the current dynamic with COVID, with the various economic challenges that are facing our country, I think it's so important that we think about how we can create jobs and growth, reducing the need for government services, strengthening communities, strengthening the support that individuals face independent of government. And then we have a greater capacity to focus the public resources we have on those who are not able to find that assistance any other way. If we have lower unemployment rate, it stands to reason that we can provide more, better, longer-term effective supports to those who aren't employed. But if we have a higher level of unemployment, then our collective capacity to do that, Madam Speaker, is somewhat reduced. Unfortunately, what we see right now from this government is the lack of that plan for jobs and growth, and that's really what's going to get out of it.